All right. Okay, so good to see you all back for some Gemara learning. That's great. So I picked a piece I think that will be very relevant for you. You'll have something to share maybe at the Seder. So you're probably all aware, right? So at the Seder, what do? We eat the matzah, right? After 2 cups of wine, but yeah, sometime in, but that's like, you want to get to eat the matzah, right? After eating the matzah, we eat the maror, the bitter herbs. And after that, if that wasn't enough, we eat the Korech sandwich or Hillel sandwich. Hillel sandwich. Korech means that you put it together, but matzah and maror together. And then later again, you have to eat at the end of the meal more matzah, the afikomen, right? So it's a lot of. So you probably wondered, or maybe why do we do that, right? Okay, because it's Hillel sandwich, but
Which means, of course, that Shammai had a different kind of sandwich.
right, which that's what we'll get to. We're going to speak, or maybe no sandwich at all, right? That's the thing. Because that's the funny thing is we eat the matzah by itself, the maror by itself, and then we eat it as a sandwich.
Is there charoset in any of that?
Oh, also, yeah. So maror, basically, whenever we eat maror, we dip it in charoset. Which also there's a piece.
Saying, that in my house anyway, in every house that I've been to, there's always a discussion about this.
Yeah, so it's not. So the idea, the charoset is not supposed to be what's it called? Why is this box up here? The charoset is not supposed to be like to blend out the taste of the maror, but our custom, we actually just dip it and kind of shake it off afterwards. Which that I don't think we'll get to today. There's a whole Gemara on that as well about the dipping of the charosas. But it will be connected to our discussion as well. Okay, so let's get started with Pesachim. So same tractate, the same chapter that we were studying the past couple of weeks, but a few pages further in. It's page 115a. I gathered these texts from online, and then afterwards I realized maybe the English translation kills the whole fun because it kind of explains it all. But I was too lazy to go back and then delete all the other words and just leave the bold. But so we'll see how that how that works. All right. Okay. So let me start. Okay, so this is a few lines into the page. So it says like this. If you don't mind, I'll read the Hebrew also. It gives it more of the authentic feeling. But okay, so we have as we spoke in the classes before that when they compiled the Gemara, they were very careful to always record the source of who it's from, right? And we brought one example where it brought in, I think it was 8 names in a row to record where it came from. So here we have a similar case. It says, Amar Ravina. So Ravina said, Amar li Rav Mesharshia bered Rav Nasan. Rav Mesharshia said to me, Rav Mesharshia, the son of Rav Nasan, said to me, Hachi Amar Hillel Mishmei de Gemara. This is what Hillel said in the name of the Gemara. Now, this is very interesting. It's important to point out, where did I see it? That the commentators explain this Hillel is not the Hillel of the Hillel sandwich. Because the Hillel sandwich is the Hillel and Shammai, who lived at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the second temple, before it was destroyed, and it was contemporary of Shammai, and during the time period of the Mishnah, right? We said the sages at the time period of the Mishnah are called Tanaim, a Tana. And these people, Ravina, Rav Nasan, and Hillel, these are all sages of the time period of the Gemara later on, where after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash a few hundred years later. So, and they're called an Amora or Amoraim. So in fact, there was a sage in the time, so to get you confused, right? So there was the famous Hillel of the time period of the Mishnah, or kind of technically really before the Mishnah. There was still a time when the Beit HaMikdash was standing. And then there was a sage of the time period of the Gemara, also with the name Hillel.
Are they related?
I don't know.
I mean,
Could be. because
is
of the
it a
same name.
common name or
Well,
they descended from?
right. I don't know. I mean, we could speculate, but could be, but I don't know to tell you that he was. So I'm saying we could look into. I'm not sure if it's recorded. So this is Hillel says in the name of the Gemara. I'm not sure what it means exactly, the name of the Gemara, but meaning this is that he was taught, he was learned. Okay, so this is his statement. Says lo nichroch inash matzah umara behedi hadadi v'nechal. Says a person should not put together matzah and maror together and eat it. Don't do that. Why? Doesn't taste good. Why? Mishum despiralan matzah bisman hazeh deoraisa umaror derabanan. Okay, so he says like this. We know we have a mitzvah to eat matzah. We have a mitzvah to eat maror. However, so actually, if you want to pause where you are and on the sheet, you can make a mark so you go back there and skip to the next source. Source 2. It starts on the bottom of the next page, basically the third page, which this is. So a lot of times in Gemara, it kind of talks about things that you need to know from somewhere else. So this piece is from, right, source 2 is from page 120. So 5 pages later in the Gemara. Right, you see it? Everyone has it?
Oh, yeah.
On the beginning of page, the printing was bad, so the title's on the bottom of the next page, but it's page 3. See it, Rava? This is the title, the header, so it's confusing, but it's not really confusing. Here it says the bottom of page 2. It says 120.
So yeah, source is on 120A, but
Yeah.
where you don't have it.
On page 3, on the third page.
This is just the name of chapter.
It's just the header. It was
Not the
sorry, it's
number of
confusing.
page.
Okay, so 120.
Confusing, so why not?
Right. So on 120, so on 120, there the Gemara speaks like this. You got it? Amar Rava said, Matzah bisman hazeh deoraisa, umoror derabbanan. So deoraisa means from the Torah. So in general, we have, it's very important to remember, we have many mitzvos, right? 613 mitzvot from the Torah. Now, in addition to the mitzvos of the Torah, we also have rabbinic mitzvot, right? For example, lighting the menorah on Hanukkah is rabbinic because the rabbis instituted because it happened much later. Or even Purim, the whole celebration of Purim is rabbinic. Netilat Yadayim, washing the hands that everyone should wash, is rabbinic. Only the Kohanim had to do it according to Torah. When they did the service, whatever. So there's certain things, generally I think there's 7 general mitzvot that are rabbinic, but in addition, there's many other things that we do that is rabbinic. So many times it's important to know, so on one hand, it doesn't make a difference if something's rabbinic or from the Torah. Why? Because you still have to do it. We got to do it. It's binding. So on one hand, it doesn't make a difference. On the other hand, it's important to know because there's differences. Some things are more important. Or if they're conflicting, which one do you do? Or if there's a very pressing need. So many rabbinic introductions or mitzvot kind of give a caveat that if it's too difficult, you could pass. For example, this is a confusing one. On Shabbat, right? There's all the certain types of work, certain actions we cannot do on Shabbat, right? The 39 categories, whatever. Now, technically, a non-Jew could do anything they want on Shabbat. They don't keep Shabbat. They don't have to keep Shabbat. So technically, you could have a non-Jew do whatever you need for you on Shabbat. The famous term is the Shabbos Goy, right? You need something done, you have to call a non-Jew to come do it. However, the rabbi said, this is not going to work. If you could have a non-Jew do everything for you on Shabbat, it's going to be a whole joke, right? You're going to have a bodyguard with you. And so they made a rabbinic introduction. You cannot ask a non-Jew to do something you cannot do if it's for your sake. They could do whatever they want for themselves. But if it's for you, just doing it for you, you can't ask them. So that's a rabbinic law. However, they put in litzorich gadol. If there's a really pressing need, then sometimes you could.
Besides what's a pressing need?
It gives examples. Or, for example, if let's say what I'm asking them to do is only rabbinic. So then it's a double rabbinic. Right? So then it could be done again if there's a need, not just to make it easier, but if there's a need. So let me just explain this point. Double rabbinic, meaning, in other words, so let's say, for example, there's a whole discussion about when does Shabbat actually start. So from sunset to 3 stars, the 3 stars that come out, that like about 20 minutes to half hour or so between sunset and nightfall is in doubt. Is that part of the day or is that part of the night? It's in between, right? So because it's a doubt, we keep Shabbos from sunset and until the nightfall the next day, right? That's why it's more than 24 hours. It's like 25 hours Shabbat. So in this time period, that half hour is really, we're doing it in concept because we're in doubt. Is that day or night? So if I need to ask a non-Jew during that time period, that's a double derabanan, a double rabbinic. So then if there's a need, you could do it, again. So that's why it comes into play. It's important to recognize what's a Torah law, what's a Torah mitzvah, and what is a rabbinic.
What was the introduction or the reasoning for extending the washing of the hands from just the Kohanim to everyone?
I think it was so the Kohanim had to do it to eat the truma, the special food that was given to them, because there's a special ritual purity that they needed. So I think to protect that, to make sure that they said everyone should do it. I think it's also spiritual, kabbalistic. I think that was the if I remember correctly, that was the kind of the technical reason why they introduced that. Okay, so getting back to here, what do we say? So Rava comes and tells us bisman hazeh, nowadays, which means we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. We don't bring a Pesach offering. So nowadays, the mitzvah to eat matzah at the night of the Seder is deoraita, means it's a Torah law. But to eat maror is rabbinic. Okay, why is that? So the Gemara asks, Umayshna, what's the difference? What's the difference? Why is you say matzah today is still a Torah law, and nowadays maror is only rabbinic? So the Gemara answers, maror dichsiv al matzos umerorim. So it says where do we know the mitzvah of eating maror? Because it says when you'll eat the Pesach offering, al matzot umerorim yochluhu. You'll eat it with matzah and maror. So what is it? So it says, so he says, Bisman de'ika Pesach, yesh maror. Bisman de'leka Pesach, leka maror. So it says, oh, the mitzvah that the Torah said, eat the Pesach offering together with matzah and maror, means, but what if you don't have the Pesach offering? Then you don't have a mitzvah to eat the matzah and maror.
Yeah.
So then why do we do it? The rabbi said, you know what? You're right. According to Torah law, you don't need to do it, but we should still do it. Because otherwise,
Because why not?
otherwise it'll be forgotten. The whole maror is gonna have a Seder without maror. You can't. So the rabbi said, no, you gotta do it, but it's rabbinic. But wait a second. What did this sentence tell us? The sentence told us the Pesach matzot u'mararim yochluhu. The Pesach offering will be eaten together with matzah and maror. So it sounds like the matzah also needs to have the Pesach offering. So the Gemara asks, matzah nami haksiv al matzos u'mararim. So matzah also, it says that it has to be done with the Pesach offering. So maybe matzah also nowadays should only be rabbinic and not Torah law. So the Gemara, so Rava continues, he says, no. Matzah meheder hadar bekra. With matzah, there's another sentence in the Torah that tells us to eat matzah. So kind of literally means like the pasuk returns to us to tell us there's another sentence where it says, ba'erev tochlu matzos. In the evening, you should eat matzos, that evening of Pesach. So therefore, this is what Rava maintains, that what? So matzah, we have a separate sentence in the Torah which says, on that evening, eat matzah, unrelated to the Pesach offering. And therefore, that mitzvah, that instruction still applies, still standing. That night of Pesach, eat matzah. However, maror, where do we know to eat maror from? Maror is written, you should eat it with the Pesach offering. The Pesach offering should be eaten with matzah and maror. But now that we don't have Pesach offering, according to Torah law, you don't need to eat maror.
But where did maror come from to begin with? I mean, you can understand why we eat matzah and what we're remembering.
Right. The idea of it.
Yeah.
So we're just getting into what you need to do. We're not speaking about ideas. Right. No. So in other words, so the idea is of, you're remembering the bitterness, remembering the hardships. That's kind of the concept of maror. But the technical part, the Torah says, when you have the Pesach offering, eat it with matzah and maror.
I have a question.
Sure.
Where does chazeret come from?
Good question. So that
What you say?
chazeret refers to so in maror, it is always translated as bitter herbs. But what is bitter herbs? So the Gemara gives, even the Mishnah gives, I think it's 7 or 8 different types of vegetables that could be used for maror.
Chazeret is horseradish.
No, so technically chazeret is the lettuce,
That's 3.
Romaine lettuce,
main lettuce.
and endive.
The roots are bitter. So not getting into the whole thing, so it gives kind of 7 different types of vegetables that could be used. So now the custom is that we use kind of a combination of the horseradish and the lettuce.
Is ginger one of those things?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know if I know offhand, but yeah. Okay, so this piece from 120 was about just to bring out this concept that nowadays the mitzvah of eating matzah. So in other words, in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, of the Holy Temple, we would bring a Pesach offering, and then we, together with eating the Pesach offering at the night of Pesach, we had a mitzvah to eat matzah and a mitzvah to eat Maror. Today, that we don't have, meantime, we can't bring a Pesach offering. So we have a separate mitzvah to eat matzah, and that's still standing. It's a Torah mitzvah, and that's why the matzah is such a big thing the night of the Seder, because that is a Torah mitzvah to eat the matzah. Maror is, according to the Torah, you wouldn't be obligated today because we don't have the Pesach offering, so you don't need to eat the maror. But rabbinic, midrabanan, the rabbis instituted we should eat maror still eat maror at the Seder. Okay. Now we could flip back to your first page of 115a, where we were saying what Hillel said. Okay. By the way, so Seder comes from the term like order, right? So because they have the 15 steps, there's a whole order, but really every detail of what we do, the blessings is kind of all worked out. And this whole chapter, the 10th chapter of the tractate of Pesachim speaks a lot about when do we make the bracha for this? Why do we make Borei Pri Hagafen 4 times? Why not the first time is good for all 4 cups? It goes through every detail. Is discussed, the technical part.
And it says how much matzah we have to eat. Like
Kazayit, yeah. Well, it doesn't say how much a kazayit is, but yeah, kazayit, like the size of an olive. It depends what type of olive. Yeah, okay. I'll bring you a couple different types of olives here. Okay, so back to 115, right? So again, the Ravina said the name of Rav Mesharshia, the son of Rav Nassan, said Hillel, from the time of the Gemara, said a person should not put matzah and maror and eat it together nowadays. Why? He says, okay, so nowadays we can't do it. In other words, that in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, times of the temple, you could eat the matzah and maror together. But today, we have a problem. You can't have the matzah and maror together. Why not? It says, because the matzah is a Torah mitzvah. The maror is a rabbinic mitzvah. So what's the problem? Right. So when we're talking, it's interesting in general, eating the matzah is a special mitzvah, that you have a mitzvah to eat something, to eat it. Right? And we're talking for weeks already how, right, you shouldn't eat beforehand, so you're excited to eat it and hungry to eat the matzah, right? Okay. So it's important when you eat the matzah that it's just matzah. If you have another foreign taste in your mouth while you're eating the matzah, that's interfering with the mitzvah, with the taste of the mitzvah, the taste of the matzah. So if you want to spread jelly on the matzah or cream cheese, chocolate, so you can do that for breakfast, no problem. But for the Seder or middle of the meal, you can do it. But for the matzah, the mitzvah matzah, it needs to be, you can't have anything to take away from the taste of the matzah. So he says over here, there's the actual taste, and then there's the kind of the idea of what this taste is. So in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, where matzah and maror are equal mitzvos, so to speak, they're both Torah mitzvos. So my mouth is full of Torah mitzvos. You're tasting the mitzvah. No problem. It's good. But today's day and age, when there's no Beit HaMikdash, and that means that the maror is not a Torah mitzvah, it's only rabbinic. So if you eat them together, you're having a mixture of a Torah mitzvah taste in your mouth and a rabbinic mitzvah taste in your mouth.
Shame on you.
And that rabbinic mitzvah taste is interfering with the Torah mitzvah
But
taste.
eventually we do.
We'll get there, right? You know, there's steps, right? In Gemara, there's steps. You gotta
People say there's 613
mitzvah,
mitzvot.
right?
Are those all Torah mitzvot
That's
or
Torah.
or they're a combination Torah?
That's all
mitzvot?
Torah mitzvot.
Now, how many rabbinic mitzvot are there?
Generally, it's 7. I think it is 7 general ones as mitzvah, but then there's additional like rabbinic laws based on a Torah mitzvah,
A lot.
meaning 7 standalone mitzvot. But even the 613 in today's day and age, what's applicable nowadays is much less. It's less than 100.
There's no.
Really?
That's left.
Yeah.
That's not-
Less than 100.
Imagine.
And on a daily basis, very few. Like saying the Shema is a Torah mitzvah that you could do twice a day, morning and evening. That's special Torah mitzvah. But not too many tefillin, zuzah, certain one, but there's not that many.
That's an example. I don't want to get too much. I have a rabbinic sense for that. Like it's so standard.
Hanukkah, lighting the Hanukkah menorah, Purim,
That's not a Torah.
right? Because it happened later.
I was surprised Dalton is allowed to dime.
Yeah,
It's
that's
rabbinic.
right. Washing your hands in the morning, rabbinic.
It's very interesting. Okay.
Okay, so again, so this is what the name of what Hillel said, that nowadays, again, we can't eat the matzah and maror together because since there's 2 different status, 2 different levels of Torah mitzvah and a rabbinic mitzvah, the rabbinic mitzvah taste would disturb the Torah mitzvah taste. Okay. So, but what does that tell us? That if it would, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, where the Maror is a Torah mitzvah, then I could have it together. Even though it's 2 different tastes. You have the taste of matzah, you have the taste of Maror. Seemingly, maybe those 2 tastes are interfering with each other. You're not having pure matzah, you're not having pure Maror. Oh, then it's not a problem. Why? Because we see from here that if they are both a Torah mitzvah, then their taste doesn't interfere with each other because they both mitzvah tastes. So he says, Man Tana, who is the author? Who's the Tana of the Mishnah, meaning from the Mishnah times, right? The Shamitz Le Mitzvahs Ein Mevat Lazu. Who is this opinion that says that the mitzvah, if you have a mitzvah, they do not cancel out each other. You could have 2 mitzvahs together. The taste Hillel, that's Hillel. Why? How do we know Hillel has this opinion? The Tanya, we learned Amru alav al Hillel sheyakorchan bevas achlas va'ochlan. They said about Hillel, how would he eat his matzah and maror? He would eat them together in one. Again, why? When did Hillel live? During the times of the Beit HaMikdash. So he had a Pesach offering. So both the matzah and the maror was a Torah mitzvah. So he said, I could eat them together. He would eat them together because he learns from the sentence in the Torah, Shenemar matzos u'merorim yochluhu. That sentence that we said about that you need to have all 3 for the mitzvah. He says from that sentence it actually tells me I should eat it all together. Not only that the mitzvahs only have the Pesach offering, but that they have to actually be eaten together. This was Hillel's opinion. Okay. So again, what comes out right now? Hillel holds, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, Hillel would eat it all together.
From very beginning.
Yeah. Oh, right. So meaning that's how he did in his Seder. He didn't do matzah maror. He went straight after the 2nd cup of wine. He ate his sandwich. It was actually pretty good. Matzah, steak, and lettuce. Okay, very different. But yeah, so that's what Hillel will do. Okay, fresh. Okay, freshly.
Because,
Medium rare.
Yeah.
no, not serious.
What?
Steak, not serious.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
No, serious. It was the Pesach offering. It was lamb. Yeah.
And it's raw.
No, they would cook it on a spit, like or roasted, yeah.
Cheap food.
Okay, so now we said this is the way Hillel did it, which means that what? Not everyone else did it like that. So what did everyone else do? Let's see.
And if they were invited to Hillel Seder.
Right. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Cholkin alav chaveirav al Hillel. The friends, his colleagues, disagreed with Hillel. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not reading it exact translation, but
Okay,
disagree with Hillel. Yeah, the Tanya, yeah, Yachol yehei korchan bevas achas va'oichlon kederech shehillel oichlon. I would think maybe we should put it all together at once and eat it the way Hillel would eat it. Talmud Lomar, no, the sentence says, "Al matzos umerim yochluhu." On matzos and maror, it should be eaten. Afilu ze b'fnei atzmo v'ze b'fnei atzmo. Even each one by itself. So the funny thing is, his colleagues take the same sentence from the Torah, the same pasuk, and learn the opposite. Hillel learns from the sentence, it means you're supposed to eat all three of them together. And his colleagues say, no. It says, it doesn't say eat it, it says yochluhu. You should eat it, even if you're eating each one separately. So
Wait a minute, say that again.
That means
Please.
the Hillel's colleagues, they take the same sentence from the Torah and they learn the opposite. They say it's coming to teach us you should eat each one separately. Eat the Pesach offering, the Matzah, and the Maror. All three separate.
They're all Kohanims, right? Hillel is
No,
Kohen.
I don't think so. No,
What does the word Titania mean?
we learned, meaning it's quoting a Breita.
Oh, so it means literally we learned.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's Aramaic?
yeah. Okay. So now Rav Ashi asks a question. He says, if so, the language of this Breita that we just quoted is a little funny. It says afilu, even. He says, if you're trying to, Rabbi Yochanan, you're trying to say that Hillel's colleagues disagree with him and say you're not supposed to eat them all three together. You're supposed to eat them all three separately. He says, but the language of the Breita that you just quoted sounds like you could even eat it separately. Afilu, you could even eat it separately means you don't have to eat it together. But not that you have to eat it separately. It says you could even. He says the language doesn't fit. So he has to play around with the language. Elam Ravashi, hai tana hachikatani. This is how you should read the Breita as follows. I think I would think I would not fulfill my obligation unless I would put them all together and eat it the way Hillel ate it. Talmud Lomar, the Torah comes to teach us that matzah sumram you should eat it, even each one by itself. Meaning the even is coming to say not like Hillel, but ultimately the opinion is you cannot do it together. You're not supposed to do it together.
These have been some great dinner time arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the time they finish.
Okay, so
They
now
didn't eat.
we could get to the bottom line in a way is what. So we see there was clearly in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, there were two opinions how you should Seder, how you should do your Seder. Hillel felt after your second cup, make yourself a good sandwich, eat the Pesach, the Matzah, and the Maror all together, and that's the way it's supposed to be done, based on what the Torah says. And it doesn't give a name, but it seems like everyone else felt, all his colleagues felt, Rabbanan, rest of people said, no, the mitzvah is to eat each one separately. And even in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, they would eat each one separately. Yeah. Okay. So now the Gemara says, Hashta de lo itmar hilchasa lo kela v'lo karabanan. We don't have a tradition what the halacha is like, what the law is. Should we follow Hillel? Should we follow the other people? Seemingly, even though usually kind of we follow the majority, but I guess Hillel had special, authority of an early sage, and generally the halacha follows Hillel, but here everyone else disagrees with him. So it's kind of not resolved. Who do we follow? So because of that, what should we do? So this is where it gets a little confusing, if you're not confused yet. Okay, so we're not sure. Should we follow is the halacha, is the law like Hillel or like the others? So what do we want to do? We want to, if you're not sure, in case of doubt, you try to do everything. Let's try to do both opinions, right? So how could we do both opinions?
You can eat them separately and then you can eat them together.
Oh, eat them separately, eat them together. Very good.
I think that's what we do though, right?
Right.
Well,
But here's the
Kicker.
no. So let's see. If we would follow Hillel's opinion, how would we do it?
The sandwich.
But we mentioned earlier that Hillel did it all together in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, when there was the Pesach offering, and therefore the Maror, the mitzvah of eating Maror, the bitter herbs, is a Torah mitzvah, and therefore you could have all the Torah mitzvahs together, and the tastes don't interfere with each other, right? That's what. But what would Hillel say to do nowadays, where matzah is still a Torah law, and maror is a rabbinic? So, according to Hillel, he would say you would need to eat the matzah first by itself, because matzah is a Torah law, a Torah mitzvah, right? If we put the maror together, that would ruin the taste, that would interfere. But now, when it comes to the maror, he would tell you, according to Hillel himself, he would say, eat the matzah and the maror together. So in other words, he would say, go from matzah to sandwich of matzah and maror. Why? Because he says, oh, but the matzah mitzvah you already fulfilled. You ate matzah. Now you're eating the maror, which is rabbinic. The rabbis are saying, eat maror, because since in the time of the Beit HaMikdash you had to eat maror, we want you to do it now also. So according to Hillel, how did you eat maror in the Beit HaMikdash? With the matzah.
Right.
So Hillel says, according to Hillel, if we knew that the halacha, the law is like Hillel, today we would make, in the Seder, we would do matzah first by itself, because that's a Torah law, and then we could take matzah and maror together and eat it. You would save yourself an extra ounce of maror, right? Because you wouldn't have to do it twice, according to Hillel's opinion.
How do we know what Hillel would have done after the Beit HaMikdash?
Using his reasoning.
That it wasn't the second Hillel that said do it that way, it was the
It was the
reason
first
of the
Hillel.
first Hillel.
Right. We're going to say this. We're going to see in a second. But now, but the problem is, but we don't do it like this. Why? Because we also want to do the other opinion, right? The other opinion holds that you can't.
This is why you need two Seders.
And that's why they're so long.
Yes. So the other opinion holds, right, that in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, how did they eat it? Each one separately. So when the rabbi said, eat maror nowadays, you should eat it the way it was done, the Beit HaMikdash. Eat it separately.
Except if you're Hillel.
Right. So that's why today, how do we do it at the Seder? We want to fulfill all opinions, right? So we do matzah first. Everyone says they do matzah by itself. Then we do maror by itself, according to the other opinion, to those that argue with Hillel.
And then we do it.
And then we want to fulfill it Hillel's way as well, the Maror. So we eat matzah and maror together.
So
The
if
same
he
way.
was such a contrarian and that like everyone else didn't, how did he get to be so important? A lot of times over time, these minority opinions
Right.
Disappear.
fall by the wayside.
Yeah. I guess he had a big strength of his
Here,
opinion
except
had
it was
weight.
only one Hillel. Oh,
So
man.
I'll see what the Gemara says. This right, so it says, since we don't know if the halacha is like Hillel or Rabbanan, so therefore today, what should we do? Mevarich al achilas matzah va'achil. We first make the bracha, the blessing for eating matzah, and we eat matzah. V'hadem mevarich al achilas maror va'achil, and then we go and make the bracha, the blessing of eating maror, and eat it. V'hadar, and afterwards, achil matzah v'chasa behadiyadadi, we eat matzah and the lettuce together, below bracha, without a bracha. Why? Because we already made a bracha for matzah, we already made a bracha for
And
maror.
besides, it might be wrong.
We can't make a second one. But we do it, zecher lemikdash kehillel, remembering how it was done in the Beit HaMikdash the way Hillel did it. So that by the way, it's not many times people could think we're doing it to remember how it was done in the Beit HaMikdash. No, we're doing it to remember how Hillel did it in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. Right?
Is chasa, I know chasa is lettuce in
Right.
modern Hebrew. Is chasa here bitter lettuce?
Yeah. The romaine lettuce in the Gemara. This is where it comes. It's the Aramaic word.
In the Haggadah, it says Hasa somewhere? I don't
No, it
think so.
says
No, it says Maror.
But it
Where did that get?
Hasa.
It doesn't have to be chas, it could be any.
It could be just the bitter herbs.
Get horseradish from?
So again, there's a Mishnah that lists the different types of vegetables that could be used for Maror.
Yeah, it's the first time you see chasa in the biblical
Yeah.
book.
So now,
It's a really common word in modern
let me
Hebrew.
just grab. Oh, I didn't have.
So wonder, did all these vegetables grow
Yeah.
in Jerusalem or Babylonia or whatever?
Source
It must
two.
have. Yeah,
And then, what do I have for source 3?
Do we eat matzah and horseradish too? We do, right?
Yeah, we put horseradish in also. Okay, so the source 3 I didn't have a translation for, but this was the source 3 is the Rush, which we mentioned last week, is Rav Usher, who he made a halachic compendium. He took out the pieces of halacha from the Gemara that's printed in the back. So he adds in a piece where he says, he explains this, okay, it's in Hebrew. So I basically explained it already, but basically he's explaining that if we would have said the halachas like Hillel, meaning what would be different? He said then we wouldn't need to do maror by itself, because the maror is, how do you do maror? Is with matzah. But because we don't know who the halacha is like, so according to the other rabbis, if we had put matzah with the maror, the matzah is an extra taste, interfering with the rabbinic taste of the maror mitzvah. Okay. The Ran will go back to, if we have time, because it's already late. Okay. So now we could go to source 4, which I took from it's called Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, which means the code of law, which he kind of explains it. It starts from
So where are we looking?
15, right? It says, yeah, right here. So
Okay.
on, let's just see, so I can show everyone.
The bottom of the
No.
second sheet on the front.
No, the bottom of, at the top of the, or is it fifth?
Oh, yeah, well, the title is on
It's
the-
right, I messed up, because it was printed, and I didn't do the layout correctly, so here, how do you?
It's
Where
here.
it
The
says
top of the
according
page,
to
it says
the
15,
scriptural-
according
So
to
here it says-
scriptural law.
Korech, Pesachim, and 15, right there.
They're all correct.
If you want, should I put it on the
Okay,
screen?
it
That doesn't
doesn't
help,
it
so
doesn't
it's
help.
just 15.
15 at top.
Hey, you could turn on, you want to press the on of the
No,
projector.
that-
I don't know if it's gonna work though, to open up
Oh,
the
that's it.
lens. I don't know if so- Okay, forget it, it's just, yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know, if it's gonna, okay, let me, okay, I don't do,
Just one more thing to look at.
okay, it's fine, let's just follow the paper, okay, so at 15, right? So let me pull it up on the screen, so I have it here. So the Alter Rebbe is, in his code of law, he kind of brings in all the opinions, but he also kind of explains it well. So that's, or let me just share it with the Zoom in case people don't have it in front of them. Okay. So here, we'll read what the Alter Rebbe writes, right? Okay. We'll see how this, and even look through the translation. According to scriptural law, the mitzvah of eating maror applies only in the era when the Pesach sacrifice was eaten. As it is written, you shall eat the Pesach sacrifice together with matzah and bitter herbs. In the present era, by contrast, the obligation to eat maror is only of rabbinic origin, ordained to commemorate the Beit HaMikdash, right?
Who wrote this?
This is the Alter Rebbe wrote in his Shulchan Aruch, Code of Law.
So this would be like the first,
First Chabad Rebbe, so about a little over 200 years ago.
is this Shnei Or?
Yeah, Shneur Zalman, yeah. By contrast, the obligation to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach is of scriptural origin, even in the present era. Sorry about all those numbers. Those are like the footnotes of sources. As it is written, in the evening you shall eat matzos. That verse makes no mention of the Pesach sacrifice. Okay, so that's what, right? Nothing new, right? So now 16 is the next paragraph, right? Therefore, in the present era, if a person wrapped an olive-sized portion of matzah together with an olive-sized portion of maror and chewed them together and ate them, he would not fulfill his obligation. The rationale is that the maror, which is a rabbinic ordinance, would nullify the taste of the matzah, which is a scriptural commandment.
Interesting.
By contrast, in the era of the Beit HaMikdash, when the mitzvah to eat maror was also scripturally commanded, if one ate the matzah and maror in the manner described, he would fulfill his obligation of eating matzah and his obligation of eating maror. The rationale is that the mitzvahs of the Torah do not nullify each other. They are all of the same weight, for they all involve fulfilling the commandments of the Holy One, blessed be He. Moreover, according to the opinion of, so number one, according to everyone, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, you would still fulfill your obligation if you would eat them all together, because the taste does not nullify each other, because they're all mitzvahs. Moreover, according to the opinion of Hillel the elder, which means the Hillel of the times of the Mishnah, Hillel HaZaken, Hillel the elder, a person does not fulfill his obligation as prescribed by the Torah unless he wraps together an olive-sized portion of the Pesach sacrifice, an olive-sized portion of maror, and an olive-sized portion of matzah, and eats them together. In fulfillment of the charge, you shall eat the Pesach sacrifice together with matzah and bitter herbs. So in other words, according to everyone, it would be okay if you ate it all together in the times of Beit HaMikdash. According to Hillel, you have to specifically eat them all together in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. Now we'll go to the next paragraph, 17. So true, in the present era, when maror is rabbinic ordinance and matzah is a scriptural commandment, even Hillel would agree that if a person wrapped the matzah and maror together and ate them, he would not fulfill his obligation to eat matzah, for the flavor of the maror would nullify the flavor of the matzah. Accordingly, one is obligated to eat an olive-sized portion of matzah alone, without maror, to fulfill the obligation of matzah according to scriptural law. Nevertheless,
Nevertheless.
yeah. I have to fix these, number the pages. Nevertheless, according to Hillel, a person does not, even in the present era, fulfill his obligation to eat maror unless he takes an additional olive-sized portion of matzah, wraps it with an olive-sized portion of maror, and eats them together. So this is, the Alter Rebbe is emphasizing that it's not just Hillel's opinion is, in order to fulfill the rabbinic mitzvah of maror, is to eat it the way it was eaten in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. If the mitzvah, the time of the Beit HaMikdash was to eat it with matzah, so the rabbinic mitzvah of maror is to eat it with matzah, according to Hillel. The rationale is that the sages ordained that in the present era, maror be eaten as a remembrance of the Beit HaMikdash, in a manner representative of the scriptural obligation observed at that time. And in the era of the Beit HaMikdash, according to Hillel, one would not fulfill his obligation of maror according to scriptural law unless he eats it wrapped together with matzah. Therefore, in the present era as well, one must wrap it together with matzah. So that's according to Hillel.
The olive size is the minimum required size that allows you to fulfill the mitzvah?
Yeah.
Okay.
But not,
And-
not
and-
modern olive.
Well, there's
There's
all kinds
discussion.
of
Well,
olives.
yeah. Okay. Let's kind of not get into it.
28 grams.
And how
But
many?
it's
And
not like you saying that's the most you can.
no,
eat.
it's minimum.
Yes.
Okay, now 18, right? Just lost. Oh yeah, here. Right now, paragraph 18. Yeah. However, so according to Hillel, we would eat matzah and then we would eat maror and matzah together. However, Hillel's fellow sages differed with him and maintained that it was not necessary to wrap matzah and maror and eat them together at all, neither according to scriptural law in the era of the Beit HaMikdash, nor according to rabbinic law in the present era. So in other words, since in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, you did not need to eat it together. So likewise, when the rabbis enacted that you should eat maror nowadays, we should still eat maror nowadays, it was also done in a way, the way it was done in the Beit HaMikdash, which means to eat maror by itself. So according to their words, in the present era, if first one ate an olive-sized portion of matzah alone, and then ate an olive-sized portion of maror wrapped together with an olive-sized portion of matzah, he would not fulfill his obligation of maror, because the olive-sized portion of matzah in the wrap is a matter left to a person's choice, and is not a mitzvah at all, according to their understanding. Hence, the matzah will detract from the mitzvah of maror, because it will nullify the flavor of the maror in the wrap when the person chews them together. Again, according to Hillel, by contrast, the matzah in the wrap is a rabbinic obligation. Hence, it does not nullify the flavor of the maror, for it is also a rabbinic obligation. The two are equivalent and therefore do not nullify each other. Okay, so now bottom line, since the halacha was not unequivocally determined, neither according to Hillel nor according to the sages, which differed with him, to satisfy both opinions, a person must do the following. He must eat an olive-sized portion of matzah alone, without maror, and recite the blessing al achilas matzah, for eating matzah. With this olive-sized portion, he fulfills his obligation to eat matzah according to scriptural law, even according to Hillel. Afterwards, a person must eat an olive-sized portion of maror alone, without matzah, and recite the blessing al achilas maror. With this olive-sized portion, he fulfills his obligation to eat maror according to the other sages. Afterwards, the person should wrap an olive-sized portion of matzah and an olive-sized portion of maror together and eat them together as a remembrance of the Beit HaMikdash, as Hillel maintains. Now, he should not recite a blessing neither over the matzah nor over the maror when eating this wrap, when eating the sandwich, for perhaps the halacha follows the sages, who differ with Hillel and maintain that eating this wrap does not fulfill a mitzvah at all. Moreover, even according to Hillel, the person fulfills his obligation with the blessing that he recited over the matzah and the maror previously. Okay?
Point of order. When you say motzi, you say motzi on the matzah?
Or
At the time when you say that you eat the matzah? If you set the motzi on the matzah, then the maror and everything else you're gonna eat is covered.
good question. So
I don't understand the question.
let me explain that in a second. Let me just finish one more point, but then okay. So now comes interesting another piece to remember. So we're very, very meticulous about a bracha. To make the bracha, the right bracha, not to make extra brachas or a unnecessary, not necessary bracha. So here, what's happening? We're making the bracha on the matzah, because that's when we're fulfilling the mitzvah of matzah. Then we're making a bracha on the maror, because that's when we're fulfilling the mitzvah of maror. But to Hillel, according to Hillel, we're not fulfilling the mitzvah of maror until we eat the sandwich. So therefore, when we make the bracha on the maror, we should have in mind that it's not only for the maror, but also for the maror in the sandwich. And therefore, it's preferable not to have any interruptions in between, which means not to have off-topic discussions in between the maror and the sandwich, because you want the bracha of the maror to go directly also on the maror in the sandwich. Okay, so here, that's the next paragraph. For this reason, one should be careful not to speak concerning any matter that does not concern the meal from the time he recites the blessing al achilas matzah, for eating the matzah, until he eats this wrap, the sandwich, so that this blessing and the blessing recited over the maror will also cover this wrap to satisfy Hillel's opinion. If, however, one violated his instructions and spoke before eating the korech, don't be so worried. He need not recite another blessing, for perhaps the halacha follows the views of the other sages.
It's amazing that Judaism didn't split over this. And you can go to Seder type A or Seder type B.
Yes.
You sure he didn't?
No, I'm not at all. It's
Yeah, but that
it's
explains why
almost
you don't
funny.
say a blessing. It
what?
was almost strange not to say a blessing.
Right, by the sandwich. So now it explains, right. However, what's the next paragraph is what matter.
I don't know if I can explain.
Oh,
that.
he says,
No, I-
so he says, so he says, however, if one transgressed and spoke about a matter that did not concern the meal between the recitation of the blessing and the beginning of eating matzah or maror. So in other words, you make the blessing of matzah, and then you start talking, you didn't eat the matzah yet.
Yeah.
Or you make the blessing of maror and you start talking, you didn't eat the maror yet. In such a case, a second blessing must be recited.
Of course.
Moreover, as an initial preference, one should not speak between the recitation of the blessing and the beginning of eating these foods, even about matters concerning the meal. Try to not speak at all from the blessing and before you start it. Now, here's something wild. You ready for this? There are some who are careful not to speak about matters that do not concern the meal from the time they recite the blessing al achilas matzah until they eat the afikomen. That means through the whole meal, through the fish, the matzah balls, and the brisket, until they eat the afikomen. Why? You can read the Agada, it's not an interruption, but meaning off time. Why? So that the blessing will also cover eating the afikomen. Because you made the blessing al achilas matzah, and you want that to go for the afikomen.
This would be a great way to make the Seder shorter.
Yeah.
So can you talk
but-
about, can you talk about?
So this is, however, an excessive stringency.
But 4 questions.
Yeah, you're asking questions.
Already out of the.
that's before you make the blessing of matzah. Blessing of matzah is at the end of the Haggadah and before the meal. But it means you wouldn't be able to talk during the meal.
But what about
But that's-
wine? What about wine? We said bracha on wine.
That's before the matzah. Right? So you make the bracha on the second cup of wine,
Yeah.
then you do the matzah. Then maror, then the
Now
sandwich,
question.
then the meal.
Why when we wash hands, we cannot talk until we.
So the idea of not talking is one of the reasons why we always wash hands is because maybe our hands are still clean from the morning or from
Yeah.
before. Why have to wash again? Because the idea is hands right? We know like today doctors always wash hands with coming in between patients, right? Because it says hands, you're always touching, you're busy with the hands. The hands are always moving around. And therefore we always need to wash it. Now, if we start talking after we wash our hands, again, we're gonna forget. We're not gonna be focused on making sure that our hands stay cleaned. Meaning we're gonna lose track of what's going on, and automatically hands are who knows what, touch out of you. So now, okay, this blessing. Okay, so now what you asked, yeah. So each piece is discussed, right? So for example, a few things. So first of all, so you ask that we eat the maror, and we make the blessing al achilas maror, for eating maror. But usually when you would eat vegetables, you also make a blessing for eating the vegetable, bore pri adama, for something that grows from the ground. So you said you wouldn't need to because you made hamotzi. And usually when you make the hamotzi on bread, you don't make any other blessing because that's a whole meal. But however, is maror part of a meal? If it herbs, in other words, it says essentially you would need to make a blessing bore pri adama on the maror because it's not the reason why hamotzi includes all the food is because it kind of bread is considered the staple, the main item in the meal, and everything else is kind of just goes along with the bread. That's the reasoning why we don't make separate blessings for every other food. However, for example, dessert, you're really supposed to make a separate blessing because that's kind of after the meal. Dessert. You would make another blessing. So here where it's kind of an appetite, it's not really part of a meal we're eating with the bread. In concept, you would make a bore pri hadama separately. But we don't. Why? Because we make the blessing bore pri adama earlier in the Seder. We make the blessing of bore pri adama earlier in the Seder. When? By the karpas, when we dip the parsley or potato or onion, whatever your custom is, in the salt water, then we make a bore pri hadama. So in fact, in the Haggadah, it says, when you make that blessing bore pri adama, you should also have in mind that it's not only for this appetizer that you're eating now dipped in salt water, but it's also for the maror that you're going to eat later. Okay? This is a Seder. Everything has an order.
What's the blessing for dessert?
Well, it depends what you're eating. Fruit or whatever item, food item, or cake, So now also when you make the motzi, so right, the Seder plate, we have 3 matzahs. Now, already early in the Seder, we take the middle matzah and yachatz, we break it in half, and we put half of it away for afikomen. So now you're left with 2.5 matzahs in their Seder plate. Now comes the time of matzah. So you first need to make the bracha. We make 2 blessings. First, the bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz, for like eating bread. So at that point, you're supposed to hold all 2.5 matzahs together, because just like every holiday or Shabbat, you're supposed to have 2 breads, lechem mishnah, double portion over. Now, but then for the blessing of matzah, so you first make the one blessing, then you make a second blessing for eating matzah. At that point, it says you could drop, meaning you let go of the third matzah and hold just the first and the other half. The middle one is a half. And that's where you make the blessing of eating matzah. And someone who has a Seder plate, ideally, is supposed to take, so which matzah do you eat for matzah? Do you eat from the first matzah or the second matzah? The first one's a whole one, but the second one is the lechem oni, the poor man's bread that you said the Haggadah on, because it's a half, please. So which one do you do? Just take both. Take both. So it says that if someone who has a Seder plate, ideally should take a olive size of matzah from the first one and olive size from the second one, and eat both of them. So eat 2 olive size. Again, if a person can't, what?
What of the third one?
The third one you use for korech, for the sandwich. Olive size for the sandwich. Everything's accounted for. Yeah. So I think that's gives you some insight of what's going on in the Seder. It's a very ordered.
It's
I'll
gonna make me
appreciate a
very
lot more.
nervous.
Let's just give you a little more, a little tidbit of meaning, of ideas. So we know the matzah is like the bread of kind of to represent freedom. Flat is kind of that we, no taste. We're just kind of submit ourselves to God, and God is taking us out, right? We're able to, God's schlepping us out of Egypt, pulling us out from our hardships, from our limitations, that we're free. Maror is the represents the bitterness. We remember the hardships, the tears. It's bitter. So some ideas, meaning is that, initially we have to eat it separately. We have the matzah, we have the freedom. You also have to remember, so if the matzah, God's healing us, God's liberating us, coming out of our limitations. And then we eat the maror. Remember, we still have, there's hardships, there's challenges that we all have to deal with. But then comes Hillel's sandwich as we put them together and kind of mix it in together, where we could kind of override the now that we kind of recognize what our hardships are, what the bitter parts are, we try to put it together with the matzah, that we should be able to transform it and be able to really see how to utilize it as a springboard to make that into our freedom, into the matzah.
Interesting. Are you
All
gonna
right.
do this next week, or this was a one time? I don't mean
Not the same,
pressure.
right? Sure, you guys want to do again next week? We could do.
I personally cannot.
Can't. So then forget it.
Yeah.
Then forget it.
Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yes, one second. Let me just check.
I'm sorry. Yes, of course.
1 second. All right, let's next week.
8 o'clock
do-
next week.
On what?
And I.
I'll find something.
can't do it next
Okay.
week.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to put together something.
Okay.
Yes, Ben.
So, Libyan tradition, the Korech,
Mm-hmm.
is you have the maror, then you put the matzah in it, and then you put the charoset, and then you make a sandwich with all three.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about the shadows.
Right. So
Yeah.
so that was the Ron. I didn't have the text to put it in the source. So somebody pointed out commentary. The Ron wrote. He said, "How about? Wait a second. How would they eat the maror with the charoses? Wouldn't the taste of the charoses interfere with the taste of the mitzvah of maror? Because in fact, there's a Mishnah. We didn't do. Maybe we'll do tomorrow. I don't. Next week. I don't know. The Mishnah says that charoses is not a mitzvah. It's a custom. So they say it was just a little bit, so it wasn't a lot. The taste didn't really change it, But that's the question. Yeah.
It's delicious.
Thank you
Yes.
So
so much.
This was.
Okay.
fabulous. It would be nice.
it could be, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Beverly.
Yeah, I was wondering whether it was symbolic making the sandwich, because that's life.
Yeah, putting it together,
Putting both the
a mixed
joy,
bag.
Thank you.
the joy and the sadness.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, it could be, since you mentioned charoset, and maybe next week, it could be interesting. Was there a whole discussion about why there's no bracha for charoset?
Yeah,
So it could be interesting.
yeah. Maybe I'll do that piece. I'll look at it.
I don't know, but
Yeah, yeah.
it is, but
Right. It gives two reasons.
it's on the Seder plate, but you don't make a bracha.
Right, right.
So
really whipped through
Right.
the Seder.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Good night.
That's a lot of
Good night.
night.
Because you have to be quiet.